virtual interviews with industry and business reps. This is our May series. We've had 2 previous sessions which are recorded and are available for you to view at a later date. We are recording this session as well, and today we're going to focus on 2 of our sectors. One, the business entrepreneurship, and our host and the regional director for business engagement for business and entrepreneurship is Judy Fox. So Judy, I see you're on. Do you want to introduce your speaker?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Judy Fox and I am the regional director of the business and entrepreneurship sector for the Los Angeles region. I'm pleased to bring to you today Mr. Mo Hamidi, and I actually first met at Cerritos College quite a while ago when he was the CEO of a company that he started that brought some participants to the college to be part of a logistics training that we were offering. The next time we ran that same logistics training, though, Mo had actually showed up as an employer for a new company that he had started, and he was actually there as a recruiter at that point. So his journey from being a broke college student to being the CEO of his own company to starting another entrepreneurial venture is quite fascinating, and it's the one that he's going to share with us today. So Mo, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about who you are and your journey up to the point of when you first initiated your last entrepreneurial opportunity.
Yeah, how you guys doing? Thank you for bringing me on. It's a pleasure. Appreciate giving me the time today. So just give you a quick little synopsis of kind of like my life, I guess. I'm just like any other, I started up in high school. I barely graduated high school. I went to community college, was on academic probation my first semester. And then I met this instructor, had a big influence on me, kind of got my academics together. And I was blessed enough to get into Berkeley in UCLA. And I actually transferred to UCLA, graduated top 10% of my department. I studied political science, focusing on racial politics. And then out of college, it was 2010. At first I wanted to become a civil rights attorney. I did a whole internship that didn't work out, but it was 2010. I decided to go into the workforce, but it was during the recession. It was hard to find a job. So anyways, long story short, a few years later after college, I met this organization called the Veteran Learning Centers. And what they do is they help veterans transition to get into education and also help them with supportive service. It's like a transition educational program. I got involved with that, and then I realized that, there's a lot of youth out there that kind of need the same services, 18 to 24-year-olds. And then that's how I started a company called National Career Advancement Institute, where we basically partner up with community colleges. We come up with curriculums that focus on jobs that are in high demand at the moment. And basically help these folks that come from these high schools, help them get into some sort of career pathway, and then also guide them on secondary education. I'll give you a quick example, right? Let's say you get somebody that's 18, 19 years old. You help train them, become a certified nursing assistant, and then guide them in on how to become an RN, how to become a PA, how to even become an MD. So kind of, set up that career path. And I guess my passion comes from it because I was one of those, one of those folks that, a lot of it for me was I just didn't have somebody to guide me, and also that self-confidence, So, when I speak to a lot of these high school kids, I say, don't worry about where you are right now because you have your whole life ahead of you. And failing is actually part of the journey. As Judy said it, even with National Career Advancement Institute, I was getting by. I wouldn't consider like the most successful business, but you have to kind of go through obstacles to kind of figure out what to do. So present day, about a year and a half ago, actually, a buddy of mine told me about this logistics program. So Amazon actually started this kind of like franchisee, business model where you guys have heard of FedEx, how like there's contractors and FedEx routes. It's kind of the same thing with Amazon. And then basically the type of folks they're looking for was somebody that really engaged the community that knows how to recruit. And I was able to actually, go ahead and fill out the application. I was blessed enough to get the opportunity to select 1,000 out of 100,000 throughout the whole country. And then I started that program, and that's where we are today. I'm the owner of Knock Logistics, and we're Amazon delivery service partner. And I know, Julie wants me to talk about logistics a little bit. So logistics, obviously, as we know, it's in high demand right now. Even with the whole pandemic going on, it's insane. Everybody wants, deliveries to be basically with the convenience, everything to be delivered to their homes. So right now, as I was having a chat with Judy, and I said, this is actually going to be the decade of logistics, anywhere from robotics to the computer side, anywhere from just working in the warehouse. As we know, retail is slowly going away. And people want to shop online. So it's a great opportunity. Logistics is a great opportunity to start a career pathway. If you go in even as, having no experience at all, but have some sort of training, you can start off anywhere from like $30,000 to $40,000 a year, and then work your way up as well in the field. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's recap for a second. So going back kind of to your high school days, you had no idea what you were going to do. You
not
barely made it through.
Yeah.
You get into college, you're influenced by an instructor, and this instructor actually taught you how to learn, is
right.
my understanding from our previous conversations. And so it's really important, I think, the message is there that the earlier that we can connect with all of our students and introduce them to opportunities to learn, the better off they'll be. And especially even if they don't know now, Mo, as you pointed out, they have their whole life ahead of them. So thanks to all of you who are joining instructors and students today for that very reason. Now, you mentioned that you also took advantage of an internship opportunity. So you thought you were going to go in one direction,
Right.
and you had the opportunity to have an internship and found out it wasn't for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, part of the whole, going to college, or even when you're young, you want to do something, right? But then you actually go into that field and you're like, hey, wait a minute, this is actually not what I want to do. So what I told a lot of these, these folks that I mentored, I said, don't focus on what you're not good at, focus on what you're good at. Optimize on that. We all have different skills, right? Like, if you put me in finance, I'm probably not going to do well, right? Because I'm not a numbers guy, right? But if you put me out to engage in people and do business development, and build a team together, I'm going to do a really good job, So I think yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mo.
Yeah. So I think, what it is, because I remember being in high school and I took a couple classes and I didn't do well. I remember and at that point I told myself, what, education's not for me. Like, I convinced myself just because I failed a couple classes, and that was kind of like my mindset. Okay, I'm just going to go through this so that I could tell my parents I graduated high school, right? So I could just be like my friends, but it's just failure. It's part of the process. Like, if you look at most folks that are successful nowadays, have gone through failure. And I think failure is part of the process. And I think that's what, I try to tell a lot of these young folks. It's like, don't hold yourself down on it. It's part of the process. You failing, you're going to learn. You're going to figure out who you are as a person. But doesn't mean that, something is not for you, or you're not amount to, go greater and have an investment in your career.
Which is especially true for entrepreneurs. As you mentioned, your first business,
right.
You started it and you did some great things with it, but you didn't necessarily consider it successful.
Right.
But in that instance, I think another thing worth pointing out is, through your experience in highlighting that networking was also key. It was meeting the people as you went along this journey that led you to your next opportunity, such as the one with Amazon. So before we go back into logistics, in terms of entrepreneurship, what would you say that it takes to be an entrepreneur?
Right. For folks that want to be an entrepreneur, I think the most important thing is just, obviously, like, you're going to hear me say this a lot, is just accepting failure and just learning, right? And like, it's part of the process. But being an entrepreneur, if entrepreneurship is what you want to do, you have to be out there and you have to sacrifice a lot. Like, you don't have anybody to report to. Whatever work that you put in is you're going to see the outcome. You know, like I still work 7 days a week, you know, even when I'm off, I'm still working, you know, because there's always something going on, and you have to have that discipline, and you have to make a lot of sacrifices. You have to, you know, say goodbye to your friends for a little bit, you know, obviously family is important, but you're not gonna be spending as much time with your family because you got your business to run. That's the question you want to ask yourself, you know, and is that what, obviously the end result is, I mean, the sky's the limit on entrepreneurship, right? But then the liability is also high as well. It's also a risk because, you know, most folks don't make it. But that's something you want to ask yourself. You have to become very creative. And you have to have thick skin, you know? So during the process, if that's something you want to do, you also have to not always put your eggs in one basket. Even when I was starting a business, I always, you know, had like a part-time job or a couple jobs on the side to make sure I support myself.
So in terms of the sacrifice and the time investment and whatnot, and leading into logistics,
Yeah.
You've put a lot of time. Now, as I mentioned, you're broke at 25.
Yeah.
You're now 29. You are the leading most distributor for Amazon in the region.
Yeah.
You're actually at a position now where you have 30 open positions that you're hiring for, because of the pandemic. So from that amount of time, from nothing to now having your own business, now you're hiring all these people and you're putting in all of this time. What are the types of skills and knowledge that it takes for someone to go into logistics?
Yeah, absolutely. So that, you know, obviously when I probably interviewed over probably 1,000 folks so far throughout this whole process. What I look for, honestly, just efficiency. You know, folks that have like that want to get things done, that want to problem solve. You know, like very simple, right? If the interview is at 1 o'clock, but you're coming in at 12:30, and then I'm like, okay, why are you coming here so early, right? You got to be able to follow direction. If you come in 10 minutes prior to that, it's fine, or 15 minutes prior to that. If you're late, you know, there should be never any excuse to be late, you know, unless obviously, you know, life happens. But for majority, if you go into a job interview, you should not be late. So I look at the simple things, you know. I look at, you know, I ask them questions and I see how, if they want to problem solve, right? The question I give a very simple question to all the drivers. Say, hey, you're outside in the building, you have to deliver a package. What's the first thing that you do? Some people, you know, the worst answer that I get is, so I'm just going to sit there. I was like, the worst thing, because you're not being effective, right? So then I get other answers like, okay, I'm going to call dispatch. Okay, I'm going to try to call a customer. I'm going to try to ask around. You know, I'm going to try to figure it out myself. That's the type of, you know, folks that we look for, because logistics is all, everything is kind of moving, and you have to be able to move, and you got to be able to move quick, you know, not just physically, but also, you know, just being able to understand the process, you know, logistics is all based on process.
So what role does the community college play in that space then?
Yeah, absolutely. So the community college, you know, for example, you know, like Cerritos College, I know they had a couple of, you know, programs for logistics where they're trying to, you know, start a couple of programs. I think that's fantastic, you know, because what that does is just helps the youth understand the industry, right, coming in, and then that gives them an advantage to go into the field, right, and then if they like the field, they can continue with secondary education. Then they could become a supply chain manager, even study the engineering side of it, you know? So it kind of gives you sort of that roadmap of the pathway you want to get into, right? Especially right now, like I said, this is the decade of logistics, right? I mean, we're already seeing all these big companies. For example, JCPenney's, I don't know if you guys heard, they're shutting down. A lot of retail stores are shutting down, and everyone just wants to order online. But logistics is such a broad field. Like I said, it can go anywhere from robotics, right? Amazon Logistics has their own robotics team. Anywhere from working inside the warehouse to supply chain. It's just such a broad field, but that is the industry that's, you know, that's booming for the next decade.
So what is the salary range or the type of benefits, or what are the type of packages that a student can expect, like if at the middle skill range?
Right, right, absolutely. So I believe the rate is, I actually have it written down. I think it's around 22. The medium is just going into the industry with no special skills. It's about $22 to $23 an hour, and that also includes healthcare benefits, pensions, and all just the common benefits. But so that's just, entry level, right? Just kind of working in the field, not having special skills. But if you take that and you continue with education and you actually get your bachelor's in, your master's in supply chain management, where even on the engineering side, there's definitely an advancement. I mean, so right now, if you're looking at the medium, you're probably looking at between like 40, I'll say about 40 to 60,000, right, depending on what kind of company you work for. But if statistically, the higher education you have within a certain field, the higher your salary is going to get.
Well, I really appreciate that you touched on the very expansive array of jobs that are available in logistics, because so many times there's such a narrow view that
Right.
it is only warehousing or driving and whatnot. So we can see that there are not only opportunities in the area of logistics, but also in the areas of being an entrepreneur in
Right.
logistics. So what would you say is next on the horizon for you and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, till this day, we're probably one of the biggest distributors in Southern California. So my goal is to just keep growing as much as I can within, and honestly, even taking off logistics, we even to get into other industries as well with logistics. Because right now we primarily focusing on Amazon. Amazon is a great partner. They give us a lot of business. We want to outsource to other stuff. And then second, I want to actually come back to my National Career Advancement Institute. Now that the information and what I know and my experience with logistics, I also want to expand on the education side as well. Build, try to collaborate with Cerritos College, for example, build more programs, go out there, reach out more to the community. Because now I'm in the industry, so I actually know, I see it with my own eyes. And then eventually also help other community colleges and bring this program to them, because that is my passion. I'm a social entrepreneur by heart. I like to build businesses that help folks, even the folks that work for me. If you ask all my, my drivers that work for me, they'll all agree on one thing. When they come into this job, I tell them, like, look, I can provide you with your job, help you pay your bills, but I want you to focus on what's big in life, and that's what I want to do with, that's kind of how I build my company. Everybody comes in there, they have a purpose, whatever the goal is. I have some military veterans who are trying to go into law enforcement. I have a couple of folks trying to become firefighters. I have a couple of folks that are going through college right now trying to become a doctor, right? But I want to be able, my goals as a leader, as a company, is to show them, like, you could do anything you want. You just got to put the work into it and put the mindset in it. I know we hear this. I know it's cheesy, but failure is part of the process. And you have to accept failure, and you have to learn from failure. And you got to just keep going, You got to keep going, and something eventually will come together.
That's awesome, Mo. And I want to make sure we have enough time for question and answer, but real quick, if someone were interested in applying for a job with you, where would they do that?
Absolutely. Well, they could simply, two things. They could just email me, so I could give you want me to just give my email out?
I'll type it right here in go ahead and give it to us, okay. And I'll type it in the chat box.
Sure. So it's mo@knocklogistics.com.
There we go.
And then they could also go on Indeed and then put in Knock Logistics in a search, and the job should pop up on there. You want to apply directly through Indeed.
Awesome.
And basically, for the folks that want to apply, they just have to have a good driving record. They have to be, I believe, they got to be at least 21 to be a driver.
Thank you so much for that. Does anyone have any questions for Mo? If you do, please go ahead and enter them in the chat box. And there are no questions so far. How do you become the best regarding competition, Mo? How do you went from the bottom to the top? So,
well, it's two things, right? One is obviously just putting in the work, always trying to problem solve, and the second is building a good culture with your team. You know, people don't leave your company because of a couple bucks. People leave your company because they don't feel comfortable. You know, they don't have that trust in the company. So I make sure, you know, the biggest thing for me is I make sure that, look, I always told my employees, just because I own or I'm the president of the company does not mean I'm better than you. You know, life goes up and down. Tomorrow I could lose this. So I know what it feels like being from the bottom, right? So I think the reason why I connect with a lot of, you know, my employees is I can relate to them, you know? So that's kind of like the culture that I built. And that's what it takes. It's like, you gotta really invest into your employees. And
well,
yeah.
Isn't it true also that you were struggling at one point, and what you did in order to gain the competitive edge was you did an assessment of all of your people and found out what their strengths were, and then did kind of a strategic alignment of your people to utilize those strengths, and then in turn that kind of helped to catapult the efficiency of your delivery process.
Right, absolutely. So basically, you know, there's it comes down to the mindset. Like I said, with logistics, it's all process. You have to trust the process, right? As long as you trust the process, you're gonna do well at this job. What happens is, you know, folks try to come up with their own system, try to do things differently. Amazon trains us on how to do the process correctly. It's $1 trillion company, you know? So that's what I basically told all our employees. Like, we've had employees that came in, they did a horrible job the first 2 weeks. You know, they were struggling. And then I said, look, what is your process? And I said, look, trust the process, trust the process. Now there's my top drivers, right? So that's, you know, trusting the process is not just with Knock Logistics, any company, it's just in general in life, right? And just something I didn't mention is just like with education, right? You know, some people ask me, how'd you go from like failing classes to getting A's, right? Trust the process. How do you trust the process? The instructor gives you a syllabus. It tells you all the readings. It tells you all the assignment. Do them ahead of time, and just listen to the instructor. And since I'm not saying you're going to get an A every time, but you're most likely going to get at least a B. So that's simply put, that's what life is. You got to trust the process.
So, are there any disadvantages? Now you're an entrepreneur, you own your own business, and you're in logistics. So whichever side you would like to address, what would you say are the disadvantages that someone would need to maybe prepare themselves to experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it depends. Like, if you're a driver, you know, some of the disadvantage, I mean, I want to say this. So I want to give you more of a broad answer, right? So if you're somebody that kind of is somebody that's more a people's person, that kind of likes network, kind of goes out there, you know, this logistics might not be the right fit for you, right? Like, business development might be better for you, you know, more on sales and marketing, because logistics mostly you kind of working behind, you know, behind the doors. So there's a different type of personality that it takes, you know?
And then do you align or utilize any other groups, associations, or organizations like the Small Business Association?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really tapped into the SBA yet, but it's definitely, I have some contacts there, for sure.
Fantastic. Well, if there are no more questions, then I would just like to thank everyone for being a part of this discussion.
I think there's one more question. I just saw right now. How did you become a logistics expert?
Oh, I missed that one. I'm so sorry.
What were the... So becoming it's not that I became like so basically when you get this opportunity, Amazon actually sends you to Seattle for 2 weeks. So they actually train you, right? They train Amazon values, and how they're effective as a company. So basically the way Amazon's pretty simple. They're customer obsessed. Yeah. They're all about customer, whatever we could do to make sure the customers are satisfied, right? And then in terms of becoming an expert, I wouldn't say I'm an expert per se. For me, it was just a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out what are better processes to get the job done, right? There's other companies that have different processes. I have my own process. But I did ask a lot of questions, there's other companies that are successful, they've been there for a long time. I'm not afraid to ask questions, and that's really important. You always want to ask questions, and go to folks that are successful, so they can kind of mentor you. Hope that answered the question. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So would that be your one? What would be your one piece of advice then?
Always don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Whatever field that you want to go into, find somebody that's in that field and literally become friends with them, ask them questions, help them, volunteer. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm one of those folks, I'll go, when I was in college, writing was kind of one of my core skills, and sad thing is I was a poli-sci major. Everything is is writing. But what I did was I just went to my professor. I would write my rough drafts like 2 weeks ahead of time before the paper was due, and I would literally go into the professor right here and give me some feedback. So that's really important. Don't be afraid, to ask for help. And I think some of us have that personality, and I was one of those, right? Like I was always afraid to ask for. I didn't want people to look down on me or think, I don't have the mental capacity to understand something. But honestly, the most successful people in the world ask questions. Steve Jobs, I think, had this famous line. He said, don't quote me, something along the lines was like, I hire people to tell me what to do, So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Fantastic. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Mo. That was a very inspiring story. We appreciate that, and good information, and congratulations on your success.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We're going to shift gears. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say absolutely. And if you guys ever need anything, or if you guys want me to come talk to any students, anybody, feel free. Judy has my contact information. I'm always available to help out the community.
Great. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit to the healthcare industry, and Shari Hertzfeld is the regional director, and she'll introduce her guest speaker. Shari?
Yeah, hi. Well, thank you, Judy and Mo. That was really inspiring. And I just feel like, there's some great advice that applies all across every sector. And I really appreciate your feedback. You're a hard act to follow now. Anyways, but welcome. So we're going to switch gears and talk about the health sector. And there's a lot of opportunities in the health sector. You hear a lot about what's going on in our field these days. But from entry level to very high level professionals, we have occupations in every different range. And everyone knows about things like certified nurses assistant, registered nurses, physicians. But there's a lot of other occupations in healthcare that people don't always see and know about. And so today we have an opportunity to talk about one that's maybe unfamiliar. We're going to talk about orthopedic technology, and we have with us Nikki Anderson, who came she's at lunch right now. She's in her scrubs, and she will go back and work some more this afternoon. But Nikki has been an orthopedic technician for 28 years. I'm working all over Orange County. And she's currently, and has for the past 17 years, worked at St. Jude's as a senior orthopedic technician. And she also works at several orthopedic clinics and schools as an instructor, training physicians' assistants, physicians, and medical staff. Nikki taught at the North Orange County ROP program in Anaheim as an orthopedics instructor before they closed that program. She's an active member of the disciplinary board for the National Board of Orthopedic Technicians. And this is her third thing, it's too bad that the ROP closed, but it was a great opportunity for Rio Hondo. We initiated an orthopedic technician program, and Nikki is one of our faculty members and has been for the last 3 years. So Nikki, can you share a little bit about what your profession is all about? What do you do?
Yeah, sure. My profession entails working in a busy orthopedic clinic. We see about 400 patients a day. And in my office, my casting room, we see about 60 patients a day. And I do everything from suture removal to staples, to wound care, casting, splinting. We also cast for the hospital. There's 37,000 employees, and there's only 3 orthotics. So we cover the hospital and the clinic. I also go into surgery. We see all the post-operative patients in my clinic. We work closely with all the docs.
So you get to
also, like you mentioned, I also go to other clinics and I give tutorials to doctors who aren't familiar with casting and they haven't done it in a long time, or PAs, USC, UCLA. They have clinics because they only get 1 day, those PA students. So I come in there and give them an 8-hour crash course in casting, splinting, some wound care. We also, well, for myself, I also kind of moonlight for other doctors in the area that don't do casting. So they'll call me and I'll go to their office and I'll do their casting for them, kind of on call when I get a chance to do that. So it's pretty busy, but we're pretty much the backbone of orthopedics.
Very good. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got to this point, about your education and the pathway that brought you here?
Absolutely. I played soccer in high school, so the majority of my time was spent in the orthopedic office. I had knee surgeries, and I kind of gravitated towards orthopedics at a very early age. I was probably 16, and I was in there so much that my orthopedic surgeon actually gave me a job, and he trained me to be an orthotech. I was very, I fell in love with ortho right away. So it was very easy for me. And when it was Friendly Hills, so they closed down, and I went to St. Jude's. What happened was, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. I worked at several different places. And then when I went to St. Jude, they said, "Do you have your license?" And I said, "No, I don't." And they said, "Would you go back to school and get it?" I said, "Yes." So I went to the ROP program and got it. I went to the school. It was a 1-year program, just like Rio Hondo. And at the end of that, the instructor, which is an instructor now with me at Rio Hondo, Frank Brault, said, "Would you mind teaching?" And I said, "Absolutely." So it started from there. And every day since then, every day I'm at work, people say, "What are you doing? How is it that I get to just see you and not the doctor?" And it's pretty awesome. So Lila, who's on the call, was actually a patient of mine, and she said, "What do you do and how do you do it?" And I said, "Well, this is what I do," because every time Lila would come in the office, she would see me. She had a problem with her post-operative care or her cast, and she wouldn't see the doctor, she would see me. So that's kind of how it grew from there. And I have been teaching for a really long time. And the last 3 years of my career, I've been teaching at Rio Hondo.
Awesome. Awesome. So what are some of the essential knowledges and skills that are needed for your job?
Well, I always say one of the things I can't teach is compassion. And that's what you really have to have. But aside from the schooling, you need 1 year of school. And that's not 1 year of school. You need physiology and anatomy to get into the orthopedic class. And then it's a 1-year program. The first couple months are spent on the theory behind orthopedics, and it's the lecture portion. And the second half, which starts in February, is my portion, and that's lab. And it's all hands-on. It's all casting, splinting, custom splinting, wound care, how to work in the operating room, how to work with physicians, staple removal, suture removal, positions, things of that nature.
Yeah. Are there other certificates that are useful that might work together with an orthopedic technician certificate?
You know, there are like medical assistants. So my job, we started a junior tech program for for students that, for medical assistants that are interested in the orthotech field. And so what we did was we gave them 1 year to actually challenge the board. So they would work with us and work closely with me. And at the end of that year, they would challenge the state board. And it's very hard to do. So I've only had one tech do that, but all the rest of my students, I've hired 3 students now. They've all passed the state boards, which we help them pass in our program.
Yeah. So what was unique about the 3 that you hired? What were the special competencies that they had that you picked them?
You know what? I'm not going to lie. It was based on their skill set and their personality. They're very engaging, very compassionate, very good with patients. And that's important to me. It's important to the orthopedic industry that you take care of the patient. You take care of the patient like you would your own family, because you have to be able to deal with patients in pain, and you have to have a certain patience level. Patience.
Patience. Of your patients. That's a tongue twister. Yeah. So what are some of the opportunities that are out there for orthopedic technicians? You talked about teaching and clinical care.
Yes. So, you know, for me, it was kind of the ripple effect. I love what I do. I'm very engaged in what I do, and it shows to the staff and the patients I work with. But for the most part, I think the most important thing that you need to have to be an orthopedic technician, like I said, is compassion. You have to be able to have a sense of, like, for me, I work with a lot of the elderly and a lot of children, and that's a very hard part for me. It's probably one of the hardest parts of my job, getting over that, because I'm a parent. But I think one of the things that you need to have is a strong backbone, because working in orthopedics is rough. The physicians, the staff, they're hard. They expect a lot. We're a fast-moving environment, so it helps to have that personality behind you that is strong and assertive, that the patients appreciate.
Yeah. So it sounds like sensitivity to the patients and compassion, empathy.
Absolutely.
But also to be very tough. So it's really quite a range of competencies that you need, in addition to the skills of the casting and wound care and so on.
Right. But, it's funny, because just like Mo, I was in high school and I didn't know, I would have loved a career in the medical field. I wanted to be a PA or a veterinarian, but I didn't have someone to guide me and show me and tell me. I didn't know about the orthopedic program. I didn't know how wonderful it was. I kind of just fell into it because I was a patient. But for many of the students, the young people that come into my office, they have no idea what we do. They think we're doctors. They call us doctors all the time, and we're not. But we have the most hands-on by far of anybody in our field, because we see the most patients. The doctors will go in there, throw up an x-ray and say, oh, this is what you need. But we're the ones physically touching them, going into their rooms, bedsiding, taking care of them, taking care of their wounds. The doctor, honestly, if he touches them, it's in the OR. We are all hands-on. So like Mo, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't have any direction. I kind of just fell into it. And then I started thinking to myself, this is a fantastic career for young people. I wish I had known about this, because it's such a wonderful profession to be able to be the youngest one in the OR amongst all these anesthesiologists and orthopedic surgeons and RNFAs. You're the youngest one in there, and you're doing the most important job. And it's so fulfilling and so rewarding that I really wish that there was a program when I was first starting out, or a mentorship, or somebody would have told me about it in high school.
Yeah, and that's a real challenge with some of these occupations, that there's so many occupations that nobody knows about, and yet they might just be the perfect fit for somebody. So in addition to the opportunities and the rewards, can you talk a little bit about the compensation, the salary?
Yes, I can. So we generally, I would say about 3 years ago, was starting new techs out of school about $18. As of today, I'm starting them out about $24 to $26 an hour. And the reason for me and St. Jude doing that is because we want to keep them, and we want to keep them for a long time. We don't want to compete with other people. And Kaiser is our really big competitor for us, and they seem to corner the market on all the orthopedic techs. And they do that because, of course, they make great money. Kaiser's a great institution, but a lot of people in Kaiser, a lot of the employees know that if they're an ortho tech, they can climb up the ladder a lot faster. So if they're working as a receptionist, if they take the ortho tech program, they'll slide into that slot faster than most of the outside people. So now that Rio Hondo has this program, it's a great opportunity for St. Jude and other Mission and other big hospitals to actually capture some of those employees that we're getting through the school, because Grossmont College was the only college in California before Rio Hondo came on the scene. So it's really providing a lot more techs, and it's a lot of my students are getting jobs really quickly, even without their license, because they're needed.
Yeah, so that kind of makes me, so in terms of how many of the students are getting employed, but also, you talked about other opportunities, teaching and doing consultation, so what's the sky's the limit, so to speak?
So that's a great question. And I have a few students that have gone on to be PAs and RNFAs. It's first assist in the operating room, RN. So it's been a great gateway for them to get into the operating room to realize, this is what I want to do. I want to be in here, or I want to pursue a career as a PA. And a lot of my students have gone on to do that as well. So it's a great gateway to get your feet wet, and because you're so engaged and you have so much responsibility as an ortho tech that most people don't realize. We have our own skill set that we bring to the table that nobody else does. So it makes us a real asset.
Yeah, and is the program impacted yet, or are there still?
What's that?
Is the program impacted? If somebody is interested in entering the program, how hard is it to get in?
As far as impacted, this year I had 23 students. Last year had 17, so it's growing. I know there is a wait list now, and it's pretty exciting because I get all the feedback from my students. We also place them after they're done with their ortho tech program. We give them externships, and we kind of follow them through there. And it's nice to see how they're thriving in these environments. And most of my students are getting jobs. And like I said, even before they pass their state boards, they're getting jobs because we're so sought after all over. And it's really nice to see that now up in this area that we're flourishing.
Very good. So it just brings a question to mind. I didn't have this on your pre-plan list, but in this environment of COVID, and you're teaching the skills component, how are you doing that?
So that's a fantastic question. So I thought when this pandemic hit, like, how am I going to do that? My course is so hands-on, and we are like this on each other. So how am I going to do this? Well, what we did with the help of the dean, Catherine, who's amazing, she put together care packets for each student, and I put a list together of what I would need. So of course they don't have cast saws at home, so we did splinting. And so we did tons of splinting on Zoom, and I could see what they were doing. I could critique their position and how they were doing it. And they'd send me pictures, text me pictures, and I would give them feedback. And it's worked out really well so far. And I am surprised. It was very challenging in this environment. It's challenging in my environment, every day, just how we're doing things now. I would say by far this has been the biggest challenge that has come into my teaching career so far, but we made it through very successfully. I'm very proud of the way they came through it.
Yeah, that's great. It's a good thing you didn't do CAS because they'd be stuck with them.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and there's a question on the chat box. What are some of the specific courses that students need to take? Do they need to be good at math, English, etc.?
Actually, those were things like math. I wasn't a big math person, but you do need to get the prerequisites as you at the entry level to get into the college. But the only requirement that we need is physiology and anatomy to get into the program.
No English or math?
Well, I think that the entry level, when you go into the college, you take your entry level, and I believe that's where you fall. I believe the only entry level that we require is physiology and anatomy.
Okay, and those are fairly rigorous science classes, so it would be.
Yeah, and it's a lab.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. And so what are some of the rewards that you find? And you know, maybe I'll ask you to try to open this up a little bit, just, you know, as an orthopedic technician, but also just in general as a professional in the healthcare sector, and maybe even, you know, reflecting on some of your colleagues. What are some of the rewards in this industry?
Well, for me, the greatest reward is seeing people get better. Helping people, seeing it through, seeing them from the beginning where they're, you know, we're kind of like counselors. We have to kind of talk them off the ledge sometimes because they're broken. They're like, I'm not going to work. This is the worst thing ever. And I have to kind of remind them, like, I just came from the hospital casting a patient who was in ICU. I don't know if they're going to wake up again. So you're in a pretty good place. Like, you're so lucky to be able to get better. So my job, I get to see everything through. The patient that's in the auto accident that had several surgeries to walk, they weren't walking for several months. Now they're walking out of here. That's really fulfilling for me. That's the biggest reward. Like I said in the beginning, I treat everybody like they are my family. So seeing the feedback I get from patients, I thank you so much for caring, for nurturing me, for being so gentle, for listening to me. All those things are rewarding for me. I think that the longer I do this, the more rewards I see in getting my students jobs, watching my students become my employees. Those things I find very rewarding. Being able to work side by side with some of the most wonderful orthopedics surgeons there are is very fulfilling, and I feel a great sense of accomplishment being able to do that, knowing that, you know, I didn't graduate from UCLA. I went to a community college, and I feel very fortunate to be where I'm at today because of that. But I do want to touch on one thing. You asked earlier about our range, and I just kind of touched the base of where I start at, but we go all the way up to $155,000 a year. And, you know, that's a manager, a director position. It's also senior tech positions. It just depends where you're at.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's some entrepreneurial opportunities for you as well.
Absolutely. So like I tell my students to go reach out to orthopedic clinics, let them know what you do, your skill set. And so that's kind of what I did in the beginning. Somebody had told me that, you know, it's a good idea for you to reach out to these orthopedic clinics, these small ones. And so I did. I said, hey, I'm an orthopedic tech and just want to let you know I'm available if you need any casting. And it kind of happened. I have a satellite clinic I work with. The doctor calls me up when he needs a cast, and I go over there. And he pays me great money to be able to do casts, and it's fantastic. And like I said, I do UCLA, USC, a lot of other PA schools, Western. I'll hold a day clinic, and I'll see like 60 students in a day, and I'll do it by myself, and we'll hold a casting clinic. And it's a fantastic way to get out there and get the word out, what I do, and they see how important orthopedic techs really are, because they're going to be in there casting and splinting, and they rely on us to show them how to do that. So I love being able to do that. These side jobs are fantastic.
And you know, your enthusiasm really shows how much you love this, and it's really contagious. What are some challenges of working in the health profession? You talked about patients in pain and how you have to talk them off of the ledge. But what are
Sure.
some things that maybe, somebody really needs to know before they consider going into a health career?
I think for me, like obviously blood and the medical environment never really bothered me, but we do see quite a bit of it. We do a lot of extensive wound care on diabetic ulcers, just wounds in general, dog bites, gunshot wounds, stabbings. We see a lot of that, a lot of motor vehicle accidents, things that people don't like to stomach. I like that stuff. And if you like that, if that's for you, this is a fantastic job. But some of the things that are challenging are the non-compliant patients that you work so hard on to get things perfectly on them and get them stable. And they just, for whatever reason, they're young or they might have dementia. Or they're just plain non-compliant. They take it off, and then it's a major setback. Those are things that are challenging. And another thing that's challenging for me, like I said, when we see patients with have a fracture due to a cancer in the arm, when you walk in there and that person's going to lose their arm. We discovered they broke their arm, and they take an x-ray and they decide, well, they find out they didn't just break their arm. They have cancer and they're going to lose their arm. Those are really hard to deal with. But we're professionals and we see it a lot, and it's heartbreaking. And the children that come in and the elderly that come in that are alone, those are the things that tug at me as a mom, as a daughter, as a sister. Those are the biggest challenges for myself. We are busy. We're a very busy clinic, and most orthopedic clinics are very busy. So the volume that you see and the kind of care that you need to give and the manner of time you have to give it in are really essential. So it's a very pressure-driven job.
Yeah. So there's some questions on the chat. And do you need an externship before you can get a license?
No, you do not need an externship before you get a license. Oh, here's the questions. I'm sorry. I'm just looking into that.
Yeah, I'll read it to you. Yeah, they're...
What we do is right after they're going into externships as of this week. So a lot of our students, when they're ready to take the test, they can take the test. We recommend absolutely that you go through an externship because you want to know what you're getting into. Some students might get into an externship and realize that this clinic is a little too fast-paced for me. Like there's certain students that you don't want to send to USC. You might want to send them somewhere else just because of the level of intensity. So the externship is important because you want to know what you're getting into, and you want to know where you want to work or where you want to spend the rest of your career.
Here's some other questions. How many hours do orthotics work per week?
Well, that's a great question. Depends. So
I was counting up your different jobs, and it sounded like 100.
Yeah, it depends. I can work. I typically work about 50 hours a week, 40 to 50 hours a week. It can be more than that. I had one paycheck. I worked 117 hours.
In 1 week?
It just varies. It varies. But generally it's 80 hours a week. That means, I'm sorry, 40 hours a week.
Yeah, okay. So it's a full-time
8
job.
to 5. It depends. It can be on call. It depends where you work. We don't have like Kaiser's on call. They're 24/7 on call.
And then is there a pathway from orthotech to orthopedic surgeon?
There is, just like there's a pathway from orthotech to PA. Once you get into the program, you find out that you really like, this is for me. This is where I want to be. And then the next thing you would do is to reevaluate your schooling and where you need to go from there. But the biggest thing is to realize that you love it. And once you love it, you can take the next step into getting more into the orthopedic world, like an orthopedic surgeon or a PA or an RNFA.
Yeah, so it's more, so it just, it's more of a matter of really finding that that's your passion, because there's really not
Absolutely.
credit. You don't get advanced placement. You pretty much
Right.
have to take all the
We,
prerequisites.
we get a lot of the PA students from USC that are coming in doing their rotations, and they don't know where they're going to fall yet, whether they want to go to family practice, emergency care, or orthopedics. But generally, a lot of the times after doing their 6 weeks rotation in ortho, a lot of them just know right away, I've found my love. I want to be here. I've done OBGYN, I've done everything, but this is where I want to be. And that's where they kind of find their niche.
Yeah, I worked in orthopedics for a while. I remember in the operating room, it looked like my dad's garage, but shinier.
It does. Tools, hardware, everything straight out of Home Depot.
Yeah, but shiny. Another question on the chat, and then I have one final question for you. Does your profession also work with prosthesis?
We do. We do. We send out most of our prosthesis. We do all the bracing for everything for total joints, osteoarthritis. We custom make a lot of our stuff out of plastisode. So it's kind of like a little tool shop. We get to make and tinker with everything with all kinds of material. We don't like to send out a majority of our stuff to physical therapy because we like to make it ourselves. We prefabricate it, we put it on the patient. It's custom made just for them. Nobody else can wear it. So we do a lot of bracing as well as casting and splinting, but a big majority of that is custom splinting.
But more orthotics then?
Yes.
Than prosthesis. Okay, but prosthesis would be a...
Well, most of the prostheses are sent out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. And then I just have one final question for you. If you're talking to a student who's trying to figure out what they want to do, what advice would you give them?
You know, that's a good question. First of all, I would ask if they like the medical field, because you really have to have a love for medical, I believe, to work in ortho, because it's so demanding and high stress. The things that we come encounter with are different than the things that a family practice would come encounter with. We have compound fractures, you know, the bones are coming through the skin. We have things like that. So you have to really love that environment. And if that is engaging for you, then by all means, I think that orthopedics and the medical field is definitely the right calling for that type of student. It was for me.
So if that makes you excited, as opposed to making you want to throw up, that's the admission.
Yeah, because I think, oh, I just found this. You know, the ER didn't catch this, and I just found this. This is an open fracture, and they sent it over here. Yeah. I feel like accomplished, like I caught this. And, you know, we send them to the OR right away, and they're having surgery, you know, that night.
Yeah. See, us health professionals, this is exciting to us. And you know that, you know, if we're sitting and talking at lunch about this and someone else is over there like, oh, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. It looks like our time is just about up. So I don't know if there's any closing or we just think.
Yes.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Lila. Thank you so much, Nikki, for taking your lunch break.
Thank you. Anytime. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Shari, for your role in bringing us somebody from the healthcare. Nikki said that our program at Rio Hondo actually stemmed from an experience I had, and she shared with you that I asked, who are you anyway? What do you do? And the reason I asked that was because, yes, I was in much more frequent than I needed to be, and I ended up with her each time, and I would apologize. But she made me feel like, yeah, I had done nothing wrong. It was not, you know, my fault that I was there. They were there to serve. I'd say it was on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 plus in customer service. And so, and the other thing she talked about was compassion. And again, she certainly emanates that, as did their entire department. So it's a great role for people who want to enter the healthcare field, I think, and explore other options or find a little niche here and settle. So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time today and for participating. I think this completes our May series of our virtual interviews with industry and business reps. We did not planned to do this year, but when we didn't plan a lot of things to happen this year, but when the pandemic occurred, we wanted to provide an avenue for our K through 12 and community college students to meet firsthand with business and industry people. So we put this together. I would be curious if you want to just take a minute. We'll leave the screen up and give us some feedback. Do you think this was a worthwhile endeavor? We do have the link, and we will look at posting it to our website so folks can use it in their classrooms or on an individual basis. So with that, I will close. Thank you so much for attending today, and we look forward to working with you in the future.